These Eyes God made a video, and I was going to do a response to it. I wrote up this dry erase board with some thoughts I had on it. But since then, they got rid of video responses, which was really stupid. Don't believe the numbers they quoted as far as how little it was being used. Because I've used them before, and I've had other people use them, and I've read and responded to numerous video responses, so I don't really see why they felt they had to get rid of it. But her video was called Own Your Own Life. Or Own Your Life, that was the beginning of the title anyway. And this is really a response to the second half of that video. And it's really a late response. Well, first they got rid of the responses, but also I lost my cat. So I've really been in the mood to do this kind of thing. I kind of want to clear my board, though. I've had this on this board for a long time. I had to touch it up because it's gotten smeared and everything else. But basically, the video kind of piqued me in a couple ways to a couple things in the video kind of piqued me. The first, well, one was about karma, and I hate to even bring that up because it's a minor thing. You know, and I don't think it's about religion or anything. I think it's just I look at it in a more scientific way. You know, Newton's second law, cause and effect. So I don't know how anybody can really escape that. You don't really need a religious concept to believe it. But on the other hand, she was probably responding to people who do have a religious concept to it. And there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. A lot of things about karma, so I don't really want to get into that. Just erase that part of the video right now. But the thing I really kind of object to, not with her per se, but with everybody, I don't know, it's kind of a stupid thing to crow about. This whole thing about dimensions, and there's so many different takes on dimensions too. Are higher dimensions necessarily better dimensions? Is it necessarily a great thing to be in a higher dimension? And what is a higher dimension anyway? You know, there's different takes on it. There's the physics view, where you've got width, you got height, and you got depth. That's your first three dimensions. And then physics uses fourth dimension as time. So, looking at it from that perspective, I don't know how you can call this a third, three-dimensional life. It's really a four-dimensional life, you know. We're already in fourth dimension. This whole concept of dimensions, I don't know. I wish people would take their focus off of it to a degree. I guess there's some use to it, the concept, but I don't know. I'm just so tired of people talking about different dimensions, and everybody's different ways of looking at dimensions. And another way of looking at dimensions is the physical / etheric plane. The plane thing, the astral plane, the causal plane, and the mental plane. And we're all subject to all of these planes, even though we live in the physical plane. And beyond that plane, there's, of course, the spiritual planes. So they're all coexisting on one anyway, so I don't know how you can say that we don't exist, how we exist in a particular plane. Because we're existing in all of them. If anything, we exist in more planes than someone in the spiritual realm does, because we're existing in the astral and the physical plane, where they may not be, in addition to being in the spiritual plane to some degree. Now, and then I already gave you the physical view. Physics talks about X, Y, and Z in the Cartesian coordinates plus time as their four dimensions. Well, there's also a video, and I'll put These Eyes God video in the description, link to it, and I'll put a link to this other guy's video. And the title, I should have written the title down. It's something like a high school kid explains the fourth dimension, or something like that. High school student explains the fourth dimension. And he was explaining it in his take of it, and he claims to be a physics guy, so But his take of it is that the fourth dimension isn't time, it's another dimensional, just like X, Y, and Z, it's another dimension. And he's kind of trying to explain how that would work. And then he said there could be up to 71 dimensions, you know, or even more. I don't know, I didn't make too much sense of the video, I guess I gotta rewatch it. But I'll piece that up just for someone's amusement. The other thing I wanted to do in this video was make an argument, even if it's kind of a straw man argument. And here I'm taking the X, Y, Z plus time for fourth dimension argument versus 3 dimension. Well, you know, if you have the 3 dimensions without time, then there's only now. You're living in the now. And maybe this is what living in the heart is. You're living in the now. You're not getting consumed with the mind. And also looking at it in the other where you had the physical, astral, causal, and mental. Well, mental's the fourth in that sequence too. You know, and the long and short of all this is the mind is sort of a trap. So is a higher dimension necessarily a better dimension? If the fourth dimension is with mind and with time, is that really better than living at heart and living in the now? To me, you got to do both in balance, but a lot of people are saying, you know, you don't want to be in time, you don't want to be, you know, you want to be in the now, you don't want to look at the future and the past, and you want to stay in heart, not your mind. I don't totally take that view. I take it as a balance. You know, there's a time for this, and there's a time for this, there's a time for that. You need to take all views at different times. And again, I always bring up the example of I know people who have lived in the now all their lives and made a heck of a mess of their life. You know, getting into drugs or alcohol or gambling or whatever. You know, and living for the moment, not really thinking about what they're doing to themselves in the long term. Or what kind of past they're going to leave behind for that matter. So, in 3D, it's only now, whereas in 4D, you've got past, present, and future. In 3D, you have faith. In 4D, you've got doubt. Because doubt has to look at all this mental stuff where if you're only living the now, then you can have faith. I'll go deeper in that, but 3D there is no planning. You're living in the now. 4D there's planning. And kind of the point she made about karma was there is no karma if you have the 3D viewpoint. And she was saying the heart viewpoint versus the mind viewpoint. But to me, the heart viewpoint is actually 3D and the mind viewpoint is actually 4D. I know that's kind of turning things on their head for some people. But you can see what I'm saying with the dimension. You know, with time being part of the fourth dimension, or if you look at the fourth dimension as being the mental plane, either or, then you're into the mind. So, no 4D being heart, and mind being 4D. And mind is a tool of the fourth dimension. Mind is a tool for helping us examine time. Our future, our past, our present. You know, and I wonder about all this and where the balance should lie. I live around Amish people. Well, there's around anyway. The one town I work in, Fremont, it's got a lot of Amish around it. And of course there's been these shows on TV lately with the Amish, which I don't want to get into the critique of all that. But in the pure sense, and I know they fall far from the pure sense, and that's what these shows really show. They really show the underbelly of the Amish Mafia, the Breaking Amish show. There's been a couple others actually too. And really they show the negative side of the Amish. The positive side is a simpler life. If I didn't watch news, if I didn't concern myself with politics, you know, I'd probably be happier. I wouldn't be as worried. I really can't do much about it anyway. And I know others would argue, well, that's terrible to take that view. As you should be an activist, you should try to, have an effect. You should have some. You should show that you protest this or that. And I guess to me, it's a balance. There's a time for standing up and making yourself heard, and there's a time for just ignoring it all. But I wonder if just ignoring it all, what is the better way to live? Do you get involved and try to have a positive impact on the world, or do you ignore it all, since you have very little influence anyway, unless you're going to become a politician? You've got darn little influence. Your vote, is a drop in the bucket. It's not going to change anything. Our population is so big, your vote is insignificant unless it's a local election. If you do want to change something, get involved. Get involved at the local level and move your way up if you want to go that way. So I guess that's one debate. How involved do you get? Do you trouble yourself with this stuff? I suppose the worst thing to do is to trouble yourself with all this stuff and not get involved. I guess I look at everything in a balance, and maybe that's it. You should get involved a little bit. If you don't get involved at all, then worrying about all this stuff is just self-torture. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. That old thing. It doesn't matter if you don't mind. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. As far as not getting involved in the politics or whether or not you do, a friend of mine, before I moved across the state, one of my coworkers was a great guy. He's one of the lead people, as far as who they look forward to for new technologies and, figuring things out. Smart guy. But he was a real laid-back guy, too. He was the most unflappable person I've ever known, I think. He let nothing upset him. And, I found out he's a Jehovah's Witness, which really had kind of a negative view of Jehovah's Witnesses before. They're pounding on your door and wanting to convince you that their particular Bible is the right Bible and all this stuff. I don't want to get into all that. One thing that the Jehovah's Witnesses don't do, though, is they don't vote, along with not observing holidays and stuff like that. But they don't vote, and the fact that he doesn't vote made him totally unconsidered, as totally as it can be anyway, unconcerned with politics. That load was off of him. Maybe that's why he was had such a perspective. He let nothing upset him. I think I've seen the guy upset one time in the dozen years or so that I worked with him. So back to mind as a trap. Or is it a tool? It's both. It's a tool. It's an important tool. And you have to use moderation to prevent it from being a trap. Religion can be a good thing, but the zealot has been trapped by his own mental game with his religion. The fundamentalists, are pretty much in this camp. Zealots. Zealots. If zealots is more appropriate. It's all about moderation. Even religion and your beliefs have to be held in moderation. You could be wrong about this, you could be wrong about that. Who are you to be so sure that you're right about everything? There was a poet, Service, was it William Service? And I'd like to find a link. Last time I looked for one of his poems, I found a lot of his poems, but I couldn't find this particular poem. I'd recite it myself if I was any good at that. But it was a poem called Moderation. But I really think it's true. Moderation in all things. It's not always easy to do. The mind will get you wound up on this and that. And that's what you got to avoid. But to not use your mind at all. Not to do planning at all. not to look at your past and stop yourself from making the same errors again. You know, at the same time, not getting wrapped up in the past and regrets. It's all balance and moderation. Easier said than done. The stickiness of the 4D mind. Maybe you have to jump back to 3D to then leapfrog over the 4D. To leap over the time and stickiness of the mind into something else. One step back, 2 steps forward. So I guess I'm a little bit tired of all this dimensional talk. They're not well understood to start with. It's all a thing of the mind anyway. It's an analysis. It's a mental analysis of reality. It's a model, but it's an imperfect model just like any other. Using the mind to deny the mind, I don't know, it's folly to me.